Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to be walking you step by step through painting faces in MOONBREAKER. Just a couple of quick notes, I'm only going to be painting a fairly basic lighting setup, just something very neutral. I'm also going to be covering just one specific skin tone. If you want to follow along, I recommend you paint Savria or Taria, as they've got uncovered faces. But you know what, you can paint it over whoever you like, do it on Stitchy for all I care. First thing you want to do when you start any art project is collect some really good reference. And when it comes to faces, I don't think you can do any better than Arcane. So I'm using these images right here for my reference. If you want to follow along, feel free to just use these or find your own. Okay, we've got our reference, let's go. So to start with, we're going to use a nice neutral base coat. So I'm using Soot. Turn auto mask off, zoom right out, slap all that down. Then we're going to use Mikawani Bulb for the base coat for the face, and a mixture of lightened and gravitone ore for the eyes. Then mix that with some shield for the teeth. And for the tongue, we're just going to use Backfire. I like to use a nice dark tone for the eyebrows, I just find it a bit more expressive. So I'm using a mixture of Backfire and the shadow. I like to save regularly by duplicating the paint job. Part of the reason I do this is just so you can go back and have a record of all the progress you've made. Also, sometimes you'll make a decision that you later regret and you just want to go back, and the undo function is a little bit prone to making the game freeze. So now we want to start doing some highlights on the face. So I like to mix these three colours. That's Mikawani Bulb, Sunsail and Baron. When we're doing these highlights, since we want nice smooth contours on the face, you want to be using a nice big brush. You can change the brush size with these square bracket keys. You also want to be using low opacity, so you can build up the amount of highlights nice and smoothly. You can change the opacity of your brush with the number keys. So for example, if you press 5 you'll get 50%, 7 you'll get 70%, and with 0 you get 100%. Try to get used to using the opacity hotkeys as much as you can, because it will speed you up a lot. To know where to put your highlights, make sure you keep referring back to your reference, and try not to cover up too much of your base coat. Take your time with this stage, keep zooming out and checking your work, comparing it to your reference. And then for the ears, we're going to take a dry brush, using that same tone, just quickly dab a little bit on there. And don't forget that you can press Alt and click to get the colour picker up, so if you want to bring back some of those shadows, you can do that really quickly. Speaking of shadows, one technique that you can try to get some deeper shadows back is select your Mikawani Bulb and an airbrush, move the camera right down and just spray a little bit wherever you can. I like to undo and redo my changes so I can assess whether or not a change that I've just made works, and I think in this case it does. Now I'm going to move on to the lips, so I'm selecting Ensnared and just very carefully apply that. You'll notice the top lip just doesn't have the right shape, and that's because it doesn't have this little edge highlight. immediately above the lips. So we're just going to add that in real quick using our highlight colour. I'm also going to go back and add a deeper shadow to the chin, and then a deeper shadow to the bottom of the nose. I'm now going to add a highlight to the top of the bottom lip. The key to vibrant highlights is to not only lighten the colour, you also want to add a deeper hue, so I'm just adding a tiny drop of the pure red colour. Moving on to the eyes, I'm just going to darken the base coat a little bit because it's important that you save the whitest whites for your highlights. I'm going to go with some brown eyes, so I've just grabbed the colour from the eyebrows. I want to make it look like she's looking up, as if she's looking up at a staff. I think one of the most important lessons for eyes is you want to make sure that irises are bigger than you expect. Since we're not dealing with very high resolution textures, you kind of have to work with what you're given. And the only way you can get enough fidelity in the irises and the pupils is if the irises are pretty big. Now for the iris, I'm going to start building it up with a more intense and brighter version of a similar colour, and then another drop of even more vibrant colour. And then finally just add a very, very small drop of white for the shine on the eyes. One of the most important details for the eyes on any character really, but especially feminine characters, is the eyelashes. So we're going to add some really heavy black eyelashes. It's a little bit over the top, but since the models are seen from such a long distance, I think it makes sense here. It's a similar premise as theatre productions where they have really heavy makeup just so they're seen from a distance. You might not want to go so dark and so aggressively with the male eyelashes, but I think you definitely want something. Now we're going to add our second round of highlights. So I'm mixing our current highlight colour with a drop of inspired and a drop of white. I think I added a little bit too much of that yellow here, so I'm going to do that again with much less. That's a bit more like it. As with the original highlight stage, you want to be really referring back to your reference as much as you can. Now I'm just going back in the same way as before with a dry brush, the ears highlight. I think it's getting there, but I think it needs some deeper shadows above the eyes, partly to make it more expressive and partly because there's that big helmet. I'm going in quite aggressively with that brush, but then I'm going to smooth it all out a bit at the edge. There's also this heavy shape here where the eye socket meets the bridge of the nose. And don't forget to add the eyelid highlight back in. Now I'm adding the shadow cast by the helmet. Now let's add a little bit of an edge highlight to the tongue. I'm just grabbing the colour for this from the lips. Now I'm just going to add some shadow to the teeth. So I'm just mixing the original teeth colour with the darker colour. I think at this point you can pretty much call it finished, but I'm going to go in and add just a little bit more detail and polish. I'm just going to speed through this since I think it basically speaks for itself. So there are three main things that I would like people to take away from this. Number one, find reference and use it to inform the marks that you're making and as inspiration. For me, I use Pinterest and ArtStation. Secondly, learn all of the hotkeys and try to learn to use them by instinct. This will speed up your painting and reduce the friction between you and the software. And finally, be patient. Painting takes a really long time. This paint I think took me about probably about 12 to 15 hours. So did this one. And this one probably took closer to 20. And this one definitely took at least 20, I would say. And there we go. Since we've been saving our work as we go along by creating duplicate schemes, we can scrub back and see all the progress we've made, which is nice. Thank you so much for watching. This is the first time I've done anything really like this. If you've got any feedback, good or bad, leave it in the comments. If you've given this a try, I would love to see what you've done. And let me know if there's anything you'd like me to cover in a future tutorial, like non-metallic metal, glows. Thanks again for watching.